Hello, welcome to the Crooked Paths podcast, and I'm interviewing my friend Esen Sekerkarar. She's from Turkey. She's a really lovely new friend of mine. I have a strong natural connection with Esen, and I asked her to tell us her story on the Crooked Paths podcast. And as you know, everyone's story about their spiritual journey is a very special and unique and crooked path story. So welcome, Esen. Hello.
Hi, Marcelo. Thank you very much, and well done with the spelling pronunciation of the surname.
Was it okay?
Yeah, it was perfect actually.
maybe I had a past life in Turkey.
Oh, maybe.
All right. So as you know, this is a podcast that's focused on each person's spiritual journey, and I would love to hear your story about how your journey started. Like what events happened in your life and where it started and what's been happening and what's going on right now. Okay?
Yeah. Yes, of course. Well, I was born in Turkey, in Izmir, which is the third largest city of Turkey. And but when I was around 14 years old, we moved to Istanbul, in which there are about 20 million people living today.
Wow.
Yes, it's a really, really huge city. That's why it also offers a lot of opportunities. And when I was a child, when I was around 15, 16, and I was a very curious one. Well, I think I just happened to meet these people who were involved in some spirituality and kind of stuff like that. And even though I was very young, I was always accepted in such circles, probably because they found me cute, you know. This young girl having some questions and wanting to come into some circles and, asking questions. And I think that was kind of cute for them because these people were mostly elderly people at the time when compared to my age. Yeah, so I have to say that it all started for me when I was about 15 and 16. Yeah, I was around that age actually.
Okay, and so you were naturally drawn to these people and to this topic.
Yes, I think I was always curious. I always had questions, and at the time there was a monthly magazine called The Unknown. In Istanbul, I was subscribing to it. I was reading to fascinating stuff, which looked like it to me at the time. So I was curious. I just wanted to know, and all that interesting stuff that I read just arose more questions actually. So I think. And kind of, I found them and they found me. Yeah.
And what, for example, what was some of the interesting stuff that you found interesting?
For example, real life stories and some paranormal stories, UFOs and ghost spirits and life after death. All that stuff.
Yeah. I've heard that in Turkey they're very open to the whole UFO phenomena, as opposed to the U.S. where it's like ridiculed in the mass media.
I think there are still two different types of groups in Turkey. I would say that the media is very open to it, but it is hard to guess what they would broadcast on TV and what they would not. It would be maybe the individuals in the media whose personal interest is, who are open personally. So that would be the people who would maybe cover most of the stories. But if we're talking about the media itself, it's hard to say. And if also we are talking about the population, the people in Turkey, it would be a little bit difficult for me to generalize.
Okay.
But I think, however, interestingly, I have seen that because I had the chance to observe this when I was working at Turkey's first UFO center from 1998 to 2002. So I had the chance to observe what group of people are most interested in the case and who are more open or more close to the idea. And interestingly, I've seen that it was mostly the religious people who were very, very open to the idea of other intelligent life in the universe.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, because I think they thought that God has the power to create other lives other than human life. So for them, it was just a proof of God's power.
Oh,
this is how
fascinating.
they took it. Yes. Isn't that interesting?
So
Because,
interesting, like kind of open-minded as well.
It is actually, yes.
And let me ask you, that group that you were attracted to as a 15-year-old, who were they as well?
There were different spiritual groups. Some of the people would be mediums. They would be contacting with some entities. This is what they said. So I was curious. I just wanted to attend some of their sessions and listen to this channeling information. At the time, such groups were a little bit, how shall I say, underground, but it doesn't mean that they were hiding from anybody at all. It was just that they just did not have the facility because it was like 90s or the 90s, late 80s, so it was kind of people would just gather at one of each other's apartments every other week. So they would do some channeling, and then during the intervals, we would eat something, some cake, and drink some tea.
Okay, so
and kind of socializing also. So it was kind of fun also.
And what about for you? What happened with you as you were 15 and grew older and became like? How did your spiritual awareness? What did it look like?
I think this curiosity helped me to look into various different things, but also not attach to one single thing, but kind of find my own truth. So I'm really grateful for that. I am not a part of a special group, or I don't follow a certain kind of religion or a certain kind of spiritual path or group,
Right.
So I'm not associated with a group or a cult or whatever it is. But I think I still keep my openness and my curiosity.
And were you attracted at all to any Sufis? Because the Sufis in the Western spiritual people, the Sufis are such interesting characters.
That's right.
Really out of the box. They're sort of like Zen masters as well,
Absolutely.
So
yes,
did you come across
right.
any Sufis in your experiences?
Yes, I have actually.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, in our culture, Sufism is very integrated in our culture. But generally, it is like the spiritual side of the religion. Sufism, this is the definition, it's the religious side of it's the spiritual side of the religion.
The spiritual and mystical side of Islam,
absolutely,
for example.
Absolutely, yes. And yes, I have met some followers, some Sufis, but of course, I think even though I do like this spiritual side and this profound side of this doctrine, I can't say that I'm a good follower of any kind of religion. So,
well, but what did you notice with the Sufis, for example? And can you tell us a little bit about any that you met? You know.
Yes, I would say that they are mostly very humble people, and there is this definitely compassion and openness towards everyone, because the most known Sufi, who's Rumi, you know,
right.
In Turkey we call him Mevlana, so he's known as Mevlana, and he's a very, very strong figure in Turkey to this day. And so he also says that in one of his poems, that whoever you are, whatever you are, just come, because you're welcomed, even though we have broken your promise a million times, just come, you're welcome. So this is kind of the main principle, and I would see the same reflection in these people, that whoever you are, whatever you are, it doesn't matter how aware you are or how sinful you are. It's just, they would say that the gates of heaven and the philosophy of Islam is just open to everyone who would wish to enter.
So they actually lived what they were learning.
Well, they seem to be, but
it wasn't just theoretical and these high morals and stuff.
No. I think the ones that I met were really modern ones, and now today in Turkey there are some women Sufis actually, and one of them is been very well known in Turkey, and she speaks on TV many times, and she advises people about goodness, kindness, and love, and tolerance. You know, all these things, all these good qualities that we have actually inside of us.
Right, and that the good things and the qualities that all the great mystics, the real ones, the ones who
Absolutely.
were aware of the infinity within them and the magic of life, that they all talk about, you know?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
that common
absolutely.
message.
So, you know, when you look into the essence of these philosophies, you can't actually tell the difference, because the essence is always the same, but it's just, you know, how they say, it's the same mountain, or one truth, many paths, or
Yes.
It's just like climbing the same mountain from various different paths.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And did you see any whirling dervishes?
Yes, I have, and some of them today are actually women. So this is something new. I don't know when it was started to be done this way, because Sufism was mostly a cult that is only open to the men. But I think it was after the establishment of the Republic of Turkey that the Sufi places were also open to women. So I've seen some whirling dervishes, and some of them were, as I said, women. I think it's beautiful. It's very magical.
Was it soothing to watch? Did time stop for you? Did time stop for you when you watched it?
It's dancing, but it's also chanting, it's also singing, so there is also some music. And if you're not used to that type of music, you can feel a little bit alien about it. But when you just tune into the energy of it, then it does become something very soothing, actually.
Oh, beautiful. And did you ever give it a try?
Oh no, no, I haven't. I think I like watching it more because actually, actually it's kind of a prayer for them.
Right.
What they're doing. It's not only dancing, but it's a way of they're worshiping.
Can you say something, if you know anything about what the premise is, what they're doing when they're spinning, because I've read a bit about it, and it's fascinating, but
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, this white dress that they have represents their what is it called in English? It's the piece of cloth. They did like a grey cloth.
Okay.
Okay, it represents the grey cloth because.
I'm sorry. The white clothes.
When Muslims.
The white clothes represent what?
The grave.
The grave. The grave.
Yes.
Oh, so when someone is buried,
like the shroud. Yes.
Oh, like a shroud. So when someone is buried,
shroud,
they're buried with the same type of shroud.
Absolutely.
Oh, fascinating! I did not know that.
Yes, because in Muslim cultures, when a body is buried, it's buried in a shroud and without the coffin.
Right.
So you're just put in the soil in the ground, only with a shroud around the body.
So they wear the same shroud as a death. Shroud.
that represents the death, symbolizing that a human body is not eternal. It is. And also that hat, hat that they have, it also represents the tombstone.
Oh,
yes.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and I think that all these symbols are beautiful. So their dress, their clothing represents that the immortal life of the human.
Mm. And do you know about the actual movement, the spinning? Do you know why they do that?
Yes, it also represents the spinning of the world, the planet, that everything in the universe whirls. Everything is whirling.
Yeah.
So are the dervishes, and and the ceremony also, it includes some hand gestures that the head is slightly to the side,
right,
and one hand is up, the palm facing upwards, which means taking from the universe, from the heavens, and the other hand looks down with the palm looking down, which means from God to the world. So human is something in between, something between God and something godly and earthly also. So there are lots of symbolism in that, yeah.
And what about because I remember reading, and this made total sense, that the whirling had to do like how in a wheel that's spinning, the center is not moving.
Yes, that's right.
And that was their way to connect with the divine.
Yes, and in the center there is the master teacher.
Yes.
Also, they whirl around this master teacher.
Yeah. Oh, it must be so hypnotic and.
Yes, I mean, if you know these symbols, then it means a lot.
Okay, and so what about for you, Esen? What happened later on in your life that like sort of sparked your? How did your spirituality come out? Like when did it start flourishing?
I think it happened through some different stages. The first impact, I think, in my life came in 1998 when I got involved in Turkey's first UFO center.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and that was late 1998. And soon after I joined the group, I became the secondary leader of the organization. And the founder and I, together, we wrote some TV shows about the UFOs,
Wow.
which was called UFO Reality, and it was broadcast on some of the national channels.
Mm.
And I was the co-writer of it. And yes,
Wow.
and yes,
Interesting.
and then we organized some international conferences to which many scientists, researchers, and astronauts and other very well-known names in the field attended as speakers. That was held in Turkey. The first conference was in 1999, and it actually attracted around 4,500 people in 2 days, and I think it was one of the world's largest ever. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, Esen, so that's fascinating, and I've heard one of your lectures, and I was like,
Yeah.
that girl has experience. You know? But I wanted to ask you, so what is the connection for you between UFOs and spirituality?
I think it is inseparable because when we're talking about life, I don't think it is possible to separate it according to form. Life is just happening everywhere. It's not only on this planet, but it's everywhere. I mean, even the planets, even the stars are just forms of life. But when we're talking about intelligent life, of course, that has a huge impact on one's psyche and spirituality, I think, because then comes the questions like, who am I and what is my place in the universe?
Right.
When we think about these possibilities of other lives in other planets, and just only imagining that without even seeing the proof of that,
Right,
I
and
think,
also, yeah.
would have some impact.
And also the universe is so huge and it's so old, you know, at least 16 billion years old, and at least there could be other like infinite parallel universes. For example, that's what the Buddha said from his own experience, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're only being able to measure it with technology, and given that our technology is very limited, so our technology could not be the right measure to understand the life in the universe. But that's where you need a little bit more common sense.
Yeah.
And that's where the spirituality starts.
Okay, can you say more about that?
I mean, what I mean is that it's just like being a human. It's like having a soul, having a spirit and a body. And when we're perceiving things, I think we still need to hold on to that two concepts, like which would maybe the body would be representing the technology and the spirit would be representing that essence of the universe that is already in us through our spirits. So when we combine these two things, I think this is when we could get a clearer vision of what is happening, because through technologic measurements, we would only have, just very limited information. But when we start asking, okay, why is that like that, and why not? Don't we have some more information? Or what if this is taking place there? You know, all these questions.
Yeah.
Not being satisfied with the information you get, but speculating on them. And
it opens your mind.
Like why and why not? Absolutely. So this is also how everything develops, with questions, with saying why not, and what if. you know? So these questions are very, very important because this is how inventors make their inventions. And this is how I think a lot of spiritual figures have also made their journeys and reached their wisdom.
Right. You know, it's I remember listening to a lecture with John Mack.
Yeah.
You know, which you know, but the audience might not know about John Mack, so I'll just briefly explain that he was a Harvard psychiatrist, top in the field, and he started doing hypnosis on people who thought they had been abducted by UFOs and aliens. And he was skeptical at the beginning, but then he ended up believing that these people had actually, experienced something because they're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And he's like, well, they did experience something. And he came more and more around to, he got a lot of flack for publishing his book. Harvard tried to fire him to get him kicked out. And he had to get a famous lawyer named Daniel Sheehan to protect him. And Lawrence Rockefeller almost got involved, was about to get involved to make it into a big sort of a circus with the media to show how closed-minded Harvard was, and Harvard backed off and let him be, and John Mack published his book Abduction, and the second one was called Passport to the Cosmos, as you know, and he said, yes. And John Mack said that the UFO experience for someone can be like a deep spiritual epiphany of a sort as well, because suddenly you see something, a UFO that is floating, it's not making any sound, or it's it's flying at Mach 15, it's crazy stuff like that, and making a sharp right turn or a left turn, stuff that is impossible with modern jets, and that it just opens you up to other realities and possibilities, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? I have never met one single person who has not changed spiritually after having a UFO encounter.
And I bet you've met. I imagine you've met many people as well.
I did, and not only in Turkey but also abroad when I was going to the conferences to make some lectures about the UFO cases in Turkey, such as in USA, Italy, and England and other places. So I always saw the same thing. It doesn't matter what nationality people are come from or whatever their background is. It doesn't really matter. But every single person who had this UFO encounter was literally changed forever. Literally.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's amazing to see that.
And it's on the same level as like a near-death experience that's been researched so much as well. People changing dramatically, right. And and out-of-body experiences that people have had as well. It's just, it opens you up to infinite potentials. Yes,
and I think that is also in a way an answer to your question when you ask what is the relationship between spirituality and UFOs. I think this also could be an answer to your question. So it really transforms people on a deeper level because ultimately we're all connected. So I think this reality that there are other lives on other planets kind of awakens that oneness in all of us.
That sense of oneness.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I think.
There's a famous quotation from Schrödinger, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, the physics of the very tiny. And I remember hearing Stephen Greer, the great Stephen Greer with this UFO disclosure. I mean, I take my hat off to him. I learned so much from watching his stuff and his interviews. And he says,
so did the world.
Yeah, and he says this quote of Schrödinger that the total number of minds in the universe is one.
Beautiful.
I mean, that's what a Zen master would say. That's what the Buddha said. That's what that's a Sufi saint would agree with. Of course.
Absolutely, because well, if there is one source, then of course it's just forms that life is experiencing itself through. But in the essence, it's the same life. It's the life itself.
Right.
Isn't it?
Right. Expressing itself in so many ways.
Yes.
And it's quite fascinating that, for example, we've had meteorites land on this planet, and scientists have found bacteria alive in the meteorite that's lived in the vacuum of space where there's like extreme temperatures, and it lands here and it's alive.
Yes, and I also quantum physics has offered a totally new perspective, which makes a lot of sense about the parallel universes and all these what we call paranormal things.
Yeah, it opens it up.
And the power of thought,
right.
Power of intention. So this information is all coming up for everybody.
Yeah. And what about, have you had any personal experiences with any UFOs or space aliens or that you can talk about?
I made an observation in Istanbul, and I saw this cigar-shaped UFO, which was hovering in the sky. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, you just try to make a checklist in your mind. Like it just happens in a second. In 2 seconds, you just say, okay, is it a plane? Is it a balloon? Is it a zeppelin? Or is it, but it wasn't any of that, because it was just too bright, and the shape of it was this classical cigar-shaped UFO, and it's a strange one, because it doesn't have any appendages, just has this kind of a cut edge on one side, which is a little bit slanted, and it's a really interesting shape. And I had the chance to compare it with a plane which was just passing behind it, and soon after I saw that it was followed by a second cigar-shaped UFO, because they were just coming behind these big blocks of buildings, which I could not see. I had a limited view to what was happening in the sky. So first I saw the first one that was coming from the behind of this building. Then I saw that there was actually another one following it, and they were very, very close to each other, and they were extremely bright. And
silent? Were they silent?
Hello?
Were they silent?
Oh yes, they were very, very silent.
And could you estimate
anything?
And could you estimate the size?
It's hard to say, but I think one of them was like maybe 5-6 cars together.
Oh, okay.
Like in a line. So it looked like a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing is, at the time, my mother lived at the other side of the city. Now, Istanbul is on 2 continents,
right,
on Asia and Europe. So
right.
at the time of the observation, I was at the European side of the city, and my mother lived on the Asian side of the city. And the next day when we talked on the phone, I told her about these lights in the sky, and she just kind of screamed, and she said, you know what, I saw them yesterday.
Huh.
And and it was so interesting that we did the same observation at the same time, and she was observed from a better view than I had from where she lived, because she lives next to the seaside, and she had this vast sky not blocked with any apartments or buildings. So that she was able to see it more clearly than I did.
And she saw both of them?
She saw both of them, and as soon as she saw them, she thought, okay, UFOs are here.
Wow. And when you saw them, did you feel anything in your center, in your core? Did something spark up or resonate for you?
Actually, no, there wasn't anything. I was just wondering, actually, why not other people are looking in the sky, because I was with a friend and we saw this thing. We were trying to take some pictures of it, but other people who were seeing us, being engaged with taking pictures and looking up in the sky, they would just look in the sky and then just walk by. Huh. As if there is nothing there. So that was something interesting, actually.
Oh, that is so bizarre.
Yeah, that was bizarre. That was more interesting than the UFO.
Than a huge UFO the size of 5 cars.
It puzzled me more, I have to say.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to say that the first time I saw a UFO, it was in the south of India, and India is just such a spiritual place, and it was actually in a small town called Tiruvannamalai, which is like world known because there's a holy mountain there, and it fills up with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of pilgrims on full moon nights who walk around this mountain, and it's just a magical place. And my wife and I, we saw this UFO, and it was just streaking across the sky like a fighter jet speed. It wasn't that far away, and it was totally silent, and it was glowing with this otherworldly golden glow to it the whole way across, and then it flashed out. I mean, it went from one side of the horizon all the way to the other so fast. I mean, but as fast as a fighter jet, though, not super fast, and then it just faded out, flashed out.
And how did you feel?
Well, that's the thing. We both felt that we were looking at something that was not from this world, something that was, we felt like we were looking at something really special, just like some other extraterrestrial, super high technology that was like 1 billion years ahead of our technology, which is not far-fetched if you consider that the universe is 16 billion years old, so
yes, something that does not fit in with the conventional technology, which is right in front of your eyes, of course, moves you a lot.
Yes,
deeply it does, indeed.
Well, so we were talking about how seeing a UFO could have such a profound mystical experience, like for people. And you were just saying that you were saying that there was people that you noticed who saw it, and they just kept walking, like not paying attention to it, no big deal. And then now we've got a film that's come out, the new Star Wars, with all the excitement. And the title of it, I just want to ask you about the title. You haven't seen it yet, but my wife and I, we saw it yesterday. And the title of it, you can tell that the title means something special. The Force Awakens. What do you feel about that? What does that say to you when you hear that? The Force Awakens, the significance of that.
Oh, I think it fits so perfectly with these times that we're in, because it's all about awakening. Isn't it? This is just what I think, because it's when I look around, I can see that a lot of people are now questioning the system, their politicians. Of course, we have done this always throughout history, but this time, I think we are becoming more aware of our own spiritual power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think yes, the Force is awakening.
and I feel like people are seeing through bullshit much more easily and more quickly than before.
Absolutely, yes.
And that the internet has been a huge help with this. Yeah.
Yes, Definitely. That's a huge difference now, because maybe not too long ago, like 20 years ago, maybe, even when you use the word energy, people would just look at you a little bit differently. Because I know those times it was like that.
I was like that too.
My experience around, but now everybody, even the people on the television, are talking about the power of the mind and power of goodwill and and meditation. Being connected with yourself, and all of a sudden, being a life coach has become a number one job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really increasing. I mean, it's really, really, really spreading. So I totally think that people are changing.
Yeah.
They are. We are. We all are.
And there are also growth pains involved when we start growing like this. So I see humanity as a collective going through some major growth pains.
Oh, yes. We're creating a lot of suffering, unfortunately, for each other as well during that process. Yeah.
And right now, for example, it's the most refugees ever since the end of the Second World War. Something like close to 60 million refugees. And,
yes.
Yeah.
But you know what? Maybe we needed this on another level to become really one. Maybe this would be a good opportunity to end this prejudice between religions.
Yeah. To become more broad-minded.
Absolutely, because it is like when you look at the world map, it's like certain areas are dominated with certain types of religions. So these refugees coming to Europe especially is kind of changing that pattern in a way. So maybe there is going to be more openness and more tolerance from both sides.
Hopefully.
So this is my wish. So because it has already started to raise a lot of questions about people's religious orientations and how they think it will cause. You must have seen some of them on TV or even on Facebook. From people's comments.
Yeah, I've been watching it actually. Yeah, really, people are very strongly opinionated about it, and it gets them up. It gets their hackles up, as you say in English, and they either support it or they're very against it, and But at the same time, I feel like Westerners are not taking responsibility and realizing that bombing all those countries again and again and again is going to have some repercussions, So it's just like, my God, what I've noticed on my own journey with the Crooked Paths with spirituality is that once you start waking up, you realize we're one family on this planet with a super thin atmosphere, like the astronauts have mentioned in the interviews when they've come back from floating in space or from the moon or from whatever, they're shocked with how thin the atmosphere is. And it's just one human family. And I feel that people are starting to wake up. It's like the whole mechanism of modern society seems to have been to create the perfect passive consumer who will just buy things in order to feel better, and something called retail therapy, and then they go into debt and they buy products with debt, like homes or cars or whatever. And when you have debt and you bought something with borrowed money, you do not own that product, and then the new model thing comes out some years later, and then you have to buy an upgrade and you still owe money to it. So it's like this. It's like a vicious circle of enslavement to be a passive consumer,
And yes, and that's the and that's what's called suffering.
Yeah.
This is what Buddha actually is speaking about.
Right.
This is the suffering that ego creates.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think we have been slaves of our own egos, associating overly with the form, with, trying to feel that emptiness with the outside world products.
Oh.
Instead of filling that with our own spirituality. Because when the spirituality is in sleep, it's not awakened, then you feel that there is something lacking.
Yes.
There's always something lacking. So
right.
you just unconsciously try to fill that lack, to fill that hole, that empty hole, with things.
Yeah.
With items. Sometimes, or just, it can be food, it can be things that you can buy, or it can be
it could be so many things.
Yeah. It can be just anything, but anything that the ego creates, or just stories. You just, or if you cannot afford to buy things, then you fill your mind with your own story, with the thoughts, with the suffering thoughts.
Right.
But this way or that way, we're just filling ourselves with more egoic stories. Yes.
The ego is the slave master. The slave master. And there was a wise man who said that it doesn't matter if someone is a communist or a capitalist or a Catholic or this or that, because the basic human or a socialist or whatever, it doesn't matter, because the basic unit of those systems is still the human being, and that human being is flawed with all their societal conditioning and prejudices and all this ridiculous belief system that is created, that people are created, out of, molded with, and to hate other people from other countries and other religions and so on and so forth, the whole prejudice of it, that all those systems are flawed, because the basic unit, the human being, is flawed himself, him or herself. So that the real revolution, the quiet revolution, is where humanity becomes more aware, more conscious.
And I think we're in that period now.
I feel exactly that's what's happening right here, right now. And you brought up this point about, perhaps this is what we need to go through, this collective pain, this collective chaos and trauma. I mean, what's not covered in the media, for example, there's a strong denial mechanism that works with people. And what's not covered in the media that I've noticed is Fukushima blowing up, and at least three, but maybe 4 nuclear reactors that melted down.
Yes.
Contaminating.
They know very well how to distract us, I think.
Distraction.
Yes.
And, the philosopher, I don't know if you know this philosopher, his name is Cornel West.
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, he was in the 2nd and 3rd Matrix movies as Counselor West, because the Wachowski siblings, adored Cornel West. They really revered him and loved his stuff. It was so insightful. And Cornel West talked about WMDs. He said weapons of mass distraction. That's what he said. Weapons of mass keeping people totally asleep.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah. But I think we're getting more and more aware of them, and we are getting more empowered to know how to deal with them. So the paradigm is shifting.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You don't need that. You don't need that many people to become more aware for the whole paradigm to shift.
No, I mean it's when you just look at the world, it's very clear. Actually, one doesn't have to be a genius or a deeply spiritual person to see that something is going wrong here. it's very clear. If we just look at our everyday lives and the happiness, the joy that people have in their lives. I mean, if you just look at it with the non-judgmental view and just observe it, I think it's very clear what this story is all about, that there is a certain group of people who are trying to disempower us and
to control everything. Yeah.
To control everything.
A very small group of people.
Yeah, it's very, very, very clear.
Yeah.
It's very clear.
More and more people are realizing that.
Yeah, and the statistics show that as well. I mean, you can just, if you just see that where the money is going, if you just follow the money, then you just know the whole story.
Yeah. That's been coming out more and more. There's a Swiss economic research group that showed it was just such a few number of people that control everything. Mostly everything. And that's happening everywhere. That stuff is getting exposed. But Esen, let me ask you, to move on with the spirituality theme, have you you recently went for a retreat with Eckhart Tolle? Can you talk about a little bit about how you came across Eckhart Tolle? What did you read any of his books or what, and how did you end up at the retreat and what happened?
Yes, I read Eckhart Tolle's book, his first book,
Power of Now.
The Power of Now. The year it came out, and actually I clearly remember that particular day when I was reading it, because I have never felt such strong, how should I say, resonation in me while reading a book like this. So I thought, when I was reading that book, I thought, okay, this is going to change me and a lot of people. This is absolutely how I felt about this book, Power of Now.
Wow.
And since then, I have followed Eckhart's teaching, and I read also his other book, The New Earth. I also, and I still do, that I watch his interviews on YouTube. He's got a lot of them.
Right.
And now, living in Denmark, I just discovered that last September he was coming to Norway for a 5 days retreat. So I thought I wouldn't miss it. So I just joined the retreat, and it's a fantastic place, right in nature. There were about 600 people coming from all over the world, literally. And I didn't know anybody there, but I just met some very nice people there, and the experience itself, of course, seeing Eckhart and his wife Kim Eng speaking, it was such a blissful experience. It is really difficult to define it with words, but it was lovely to be in such an atmosphere with so many people sharing this unique experience. Really, I think there is something about Eckhart Tolle. He is, I think, the most genuine man I have ever seen.
Yeah.
He does live his.
He walks the talk.
Yeah. Yes. He has incredible integrity.
Yes.
Incredible integrity, because he does live in the way he speaks. He's, in that sense, flawless. In that sense, of course, he's a human being, but what I try to say is that everything that he says is really coming from the experience, and you can see that. And it's not he's not gaining anything out of giving this extremely humble man.
Yeah.
Extremely, and I had the chance to meet him as well.
Oh, and so what was that like when you met him?
Oh, he's both him and Kim Eng. They're extremely humble people. So wise and so sweet. You can really feel this compassion and this lovely energy coming out of them. It's really hard to be. You feel like they really alter your state of energy while you're around them.
Huh.
They do. You can really feel that very, very strongly. Especially Eckhart. He's also a very funny guy.
Yes, yes.
he could be a very good comedian as well. He's very good at imitating.
Yeah, he's a lovely genuine person, and I remember
he's a wonderful.
And I remember watching the New Earth webcast with Oprah Winfrey.
Oh yes.
And it was so moving. Well. It was so moving. People were calling up with real life questions, that meant a lot to them, and you could feel it was genuine and painful at times as well. And he answered everything from his own experience with such humbleness. I could not detect a trace of ego in the guy. He was so down to earth and lovely and present.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And it's so real. It's so real that you can't deny it. So you automatically start listening, and it really means something to you. And as you just said, the answers that he gives to even the most complex questions is so amazing. I've never seen anyone doing that, really.
Well, he gives these really clear, simple answers from his own experiences. It's not this intellectual mumbo jumbo, book knowledge, borrowed knowledge. He's not being a parrot. He's not talking in ideals.
No.
I remember when I heard what the definition of theology is. Have you ever heard of the definition of theology?
No, you tell me.
Theology, in the Christian tradition.
Yes.
Theology is theories about God.
Oh.
Theories, as opposed to
about God, yeah.
It's like, and I remember there's a friend of mine. Oh, it's your husband. Who told me that there's psychologists here in town teaching meditation. And they have no personal experience with meditation. They're teaching from book knowledge.
Yes. A lot of people are doing that now.
It's unethical. I've been meditating 16 years, and it's unethical, totally wrong, and just how the audacity of such a thing. I'm stunned with it. Oh, when your husband told me about that, my mouth dropped open.
It is, unfortunately, and I think it's our, ego again.
Yeah, it's completely the ego thing.
Yeah,
and the
West just wants to know everything, and for these particular psychologists, thinking that they're psychologists would be the passport to knowing everything about meditation and spirituality,
Arrogance. It's totally arrogant.
Which is not. There has to be some personal experience, otherwise, because meditation is not actually something you can teach to someone. You can talk about it, but you can't. It's not a mental exercise.
Right, and it's not an intellectual game.
It is not. It is just experiencing it.
Experiencing life right here, right now. And I remember when recently reflecting on that, and I was thinking, I would much rather learn meditation from some old man who's been doing it for 30 years, who doesn't speak a word of any language that I understand, who is just himself and doesn't usually talk that much, and just sitting with him in his presence and learning meditation in silence. But instead of some psychologist who's only taken a weekend course,
yes,
for teaching it. Wow.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to this spiritual connection with UFOs. That what we share with whatever life beings are in the whole universes, the infinity of existence, that what we share with them as is what the yogis said, is what the Buddha talked about, what the mystics of all traditions would agree with, that it's consciousness. We share consciousness with them.
Absolutely, and there is no recipe to that, and it can be found in the silence. Actually, it can be found in.
Yes.
It's a personal experience that nobody can teach you that.
It's the space between thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Rumi says, silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. I like that quote from him. Yeah.
Silence is the language of God, or all else is a poor translation.
Yes.
Funny.
Yeah,
that's so funny because do you know the beatnik writer William Burroughs?
Oh yes, of course.
Do you know what he said? There's a famous quotation of his.
Which one is it?
Language is a virus from outer space.
That's wonderful. I think the best definition I've ever heard.
It's profound because I didn't understand that quotation until I started going deep into meditation, and I realized meditation is first realizing all the noise that is around your head, in your head, from constant narrative, constant conversations, constant thoughts, and they're all language based mostly. And then language is a virus from outer space. Oh my God! It just made total sense when I started meditating and realizing that. Yes. Oh, incredible!
Yes, yes. It can be a little bit difficult for our minds to grasp how much profoundness can actually stillness would contain, because especially in the Western world, mind is a bit praised too much, I think, and being active, doing something all the time rather than being, is appreciated more, and people tend to believe that as long as they are doing something. So, or it could be just sitting and thinking about things, rather than being in action. But as long as you're engaged with your mind, then it means that, you're actually doing something.
You're being productive.
You're alive.
You're being productive in the Western sense.
In the Western sense.
Yeah.
But also Eckhart Tolle says that you are never more deeply yourself than when you are still.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because this is when the spirit arises, when you dare to quiet your mind a bit, then you can hear that wordless language that is there within you.
Well, you can feel your core essence. You can feel your existence.
Absolutely, and I think this is very important because we are a bit too much distracted from who we are.
Weapons of mass distraction, as Cornel West said. Yeah.
So we are just defining ourselves with with the education that we had, with where we live, where we were born, our nationality, our it could even be our spiritual perspective, whatever it is. It's just all definitions, but it is good to be isolated from all of these definitions and just be the essence that we are in the heart.
Right. Well, but it takes wisdom and it takes some awareness to look at that.
And practice, I think.
Practice is very important as well. Yes, it's like developing your spiritual strength.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But and I'm sure you've noticed in Denmark or wherever you've been in the world, is that people are more and more absorbed in their smartphones, in their laptops, in their pads.
God. Yes. Unfortunately.
Any comments about that, connecting it to the spiritualness, the spiritual awakening that has to happen for humanity? Any comments about that?
Well, yes, of course. Well, I'll just talk about a little bit about this experiment that they did about the power of meditation, and there was this I can't remember which research company it was, but they was just making this. They just selected these people who agreed to work with them, and they found out that people who were, most engaged with their, the smartphones or their, or internet, Facebook or whatever, just distracting themselves with these gadgets or distracting themselves with mind wandering, that's mind chattering all the time, actually feel more depressed than the other ones. So this is a real thing, and I know that there are a lot of people that are going to psychologists and psychiatrists now because of severe stress.
Yes.
Which is caused by extreme involvement with this technological gadgets.
Yes.
It's causing a lot of unhappiness.
I just saw an article a couple days ago that was mentioning that smartphones are stressing people out because they're working from home and they're constantly connected to their work, and they're stressed out.
Yes. It can't be otherwise, if you're just distracted all the time, and there is this, strange feeling that arises in you that says, okay, I have to know what is going on in the world. Right. So you just keep looking in your phone, or you just keep looking in your Facebook account or whatever it is, you just say this urge that I have to be, in action and to know what is happening, but it's causing a lot of stress. So we must be more aware of this and maybe put some limitations to the hours or to the time that we spend in the internet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it happens. It creeps up on people and stuff. It
does.
Wait. Oh, Esen. Esen, 1 second. I've got to check my Facebook. 1 second. Okay, good. Then I'll be texting, so I got some messages here as well. So Esen, it's been it's been a wonderful conversation, and how funny, because you were wondering if we could even get to like 40 minutes or 45 minutes in this conversation. We're already like at an hour. I think we could go on for another hour. Easily. We've always had really good conversations and stuff. So, but we've already done like an hour and 10 minutes, and I think it's a good enough length of time, and I think we've covered lots of bases, and it's been a really interesting conversation with you. Thank you very much, Marcelo. It's been a great pleasure for me as well. Yeah, so thank you, Esen. And, I'm sure there will be people listening to the Crooked Paths podcast who will find this conversation really out there and at the same time quite grounded and entertaining. Okay? So, thank you very much. Yeah, so thank you, Esen. So I'm gonna switch off the recorder and say goodbye to the Crooked Paths people, and thanks for listening, and I hope you get inspired to walk on your own crooked path. Bye-bye.